Thank you, and we are supposed to basically have a warm chat and conversation. The topic given has been museums, biennales, and art fairs. So I think while what both Vivan and Nanak spoke about and presented before you in themselves are worthy of questions from the floor, and we need to explore those areas a little more. Probably we can integrate that into the discussion that we have. So I'll just start off by flagging some issues and then get both of them to pick up on that. So this whole issue of the museum, for example, we're sitting in a museum, so let's begin with the museum, has been how do you say, a very debated issue in the last at least 25 to 30 years. There's been a tremendous amount of churning around the issue of museums. First of all, museums have historically had a character of being official sites. They are not anybody's site, but they're official sites. And the official site then comes with a certain kind of a narrative. It comes with a certain kind of smell and aroma of hegemony, of power, and a particular kind of memorialization. All museums are memorials. For example, if you take the National Museum in Delhi, I would go as far as to say that after the Parliament building nearby, the National Museum in Delhi is probably the next most important institution in the country, because it tells you who you are, it tells you your identity, it tells you your past, it tells you what your cultural wealth is, it tells you what your heritage is, it tells you, gives you the lens and the frame through which you look at yourself. It's like you walk into a museum and you're supposed to be as if seeing yourself in a mirror. That's supposed to be the function of a museum, and therefore it comes with a certain muscle. There's a certain muscle there, there's a certain national muscle, if you want to call it, which constructs the idea of that memory. And interestingly, you will find in all such official muscular sites, memory also comes with lapse. There is certain aspects of memory which are foregrounded, and certain aspects which are very, very deliberately submerged, or they are at least pushed underneath and never kind of spoken about. So it kind of becomes a memorialization of a particular kind of national project. Now, interestingly, this wonderful writer whom anybody who's dealing with the arts should be reading, someone called Walter Benjamin, a great German philosopher, had this extraordinary statement to make in the thesis on the philosophy of history way back in the early 1940s, that there is no document of culture. There is no document of culture which is not simultaneously a document of barbarism. And that's how it comes. There's a certain violence implicit in what we today hold up as aspects of culture, and which is why you see contemporary artists, modern Vivan's work with trash, for example, or what is done with the Museris shards. It's an attempt to bring it up. It's an attempt to bring up what seems to be submerged. So museums have a problematic like this. Museums have a certain kind of agenda, and they also represent, in terms of the art historical discourse, they represent moments of canonization, that this is it, this is our art, this is our past, and so it's kind of engraved in stone. Now, is there not space today? We have lived 66 years as a nation. Is there not space today for a different kind of critical memorialization? In the pre-lunch session, for example, Diwan was talking about the possibility of a partition museum, both at the Wagah border and probably at the borders between the Bangladesh and West Bengal side. Now, partition museum is an idea that has been tossed about for the last 25 years. Yeah. It's been on the anvil, but nobody has picked it up because of the kind of national identity crisis that we are living with. However, you take a new nation like South Africa, you go to Johannesburg, they have one of the most extraordinary museums called the Apartheid Museum, which very critically looks at its own history, that own country's history of violence vis-a-vis a certain culture, vis-a-vis a certain color, their own racist past, without squirming. I mean, even you who are not part of the South African national identity, you go into, you squirm, my God, can such honesty be possible? Is it possible to write your own history without hypocrisy? And you see it there, you see that need to do it. It's a new nation, much newer than India, and they memorialized their past in a rather brutal way. And it jolts anyone any South African who goes there gets jolted and is forced to ask the question, what am I, who am I? And I think in one sense, museums become, need to become somewhat like this, what in today's time are being called open museums, museums without walls. Of course, in the Indian context, it has been often said in the National Museum discussions, it often comes up that India is a living museum. Every street is a museum, every village is a museum, every street corner is a museum. And there is a huge ancient past, and there is continuity, and so on and so forth. So, what is it that you're putting inside the museum? The experience of the museums has also been very extraordinary. For example, in the Madras Museum, which is a very old museum, some of the largest amount of footfalls come from people who go to the Tirupati temple in the Andhra border, and then come from there directly. The next stop is the Madras Museum, and they carry with them all the kumkum and chandan from the Tirupati temple, and in front of every museumized icon that is there, they put the kumkum and go. So it becomes a place of worship. There are certain vigrahas there where they even break coconut inside the museum. And there's nothing that the curators can do about it. There's nothing that the administrators can do about it. That has become an accepted practice. So my point is, it's also, one is of course cultural practice, but it's also because one is not able to bring in a critical discourse to the museum culture. And I think it's very, very important to do that. Very important to create museums as if the society wants to critique itself, not to laud itself, not to say, look how great I am. I think that those days are gone. I think it's high time we looked into the mirror and saw the face of the Gorgon, saw that ugly face, and not to shy away from that ugliness. I think only then we'll emerge as a nation, emerge as a set of citizens, if you want to call it. I think we are living in the prehistory of citizenship at the moment. So museums are one such space, and of course, just to add a quick corollary to this, on the one hand, I'm saying the National Museum, let's say, is almost coterminous, coextensive with the Parliament as one of the most important institutions that we have. But the Department of Culture from the Central Ministry that controls the National Museum also controls 72 other museums in India. Small, big, etc., famous, infamous. Collectively, in these 72 museums, at the moment, there are 1,444 vacancies. We are not able to find personnel to fill the museums. Trained personnel, qualified people. Do an audit of the universities in India that have courses in museology, archaeology, curatorial practice. How many do you have? I mean, you don't have courses in art history, for heaven's sake. So, where will you bring personnel from? So, the UPSC keeps on conducting interviews, and 140 people apply, 160 people apply, and they reject everybody because nobody is qualified. So, what do you have? You have black holes. National Museum, 17 galleries, 7 of them have been closed for the last 4 years because there are no curators for it. So, if you don't call that a national shame, what do you call it? Now, this is the obverse side. On the one hand, you say museum, our culture, our identity. On the other hand, we don't do anything about respecting even that. So, the discourse around museum, I think, has to open out to a different thing. How to bring in a different kind of critical practice, which is not so starchy and stuffy and full of the notion of hegemony and power. Open it out to something that people can participate in. So in one sense, festivals are probably our museum spaces. You go to a mela and you see a certain kind of life, which is on the ground and where people are free, where negativity is accepted as cultural practice, but you don't create only the holy space, you also create the profane space. So that's one part of the problematic of the museum, and we need to probably reflect on that. Then you come to the issue of something very different, which is in the private sphere, which is the art fairs. And art fairs have come up only very recently. They've been a fairly new phenomenon, and have been infected with the aroma of commerce. And there's nothing much you can do about it. It is a openly, unabashedly commercial space. Should we be sneezing at it? Probably not. Probably it's a space that is required. At least some artists benefit from it, I don't know. But art galleries certainly benefit from it. My point is simply this: does it do anything to art practice in India? If art fairs are flourishing, how come they are not able to feed back into the processes of art making in India, except just commissioning work? How about some of the profit being invested in art colleges, departments of art in different universities, the training of the artist, getting the art professors paid a little more, getting better studios and better equipment in the arts colleges? I mean, those are collapsing. On one side, you have the debris of the educational institutions collapsing. On the other side, you have art festivals and art fairs booming. So I think that there's something problematic there, and that's something probably we should be talking about. The third is the issue of biennales. Before the biennales, probably the triennale, which in India was the third country in the world to have a triennale, which is pretty impressive in the 1960s, and thanks to people like Mulk Raj Anand and all that, it really came up in a very interesting way. Once again, collapse of government institutions. The triennales and the organization of that comes under the Central Lalit Kala Akademi. From the year 2002 onwards, now we are 11 years down the line, 3 triennales have been missed. Has anybody asked a question? Have you heard a little whimper from the artist community or from anybody else, from the media? Has anybody said, "Arey bhai, kyun nahi ho raha hai triennale?" It's a mandate you are giving yourself in the country. How come it's not happening? Problem. Biennales, on the other hand, are, I would say, critical spaces, very, very special critical spaces, which always succeed in provoking. And in fact, what you see in the Cochin Museum is Biennale, privately organized by I would even say 2 young lads who have no experience in this, who are bleeding money, lakhs of rupees every day, because they're not having any other official support. But the kind of critical space they have managed to create is fantastic. And the point, it's just interesting that it's tucked away in Cochin, so the mainstream is not able to go there. The artists have gone there, but the media somehow seems to have bypassed it. Except the Malayalam media. The Malayalam press has been very supportive and much has been happening there. But if you read the English press, if you read the Hindi press, if you read the Bengali press, no Biennale, no nothing is happening. Now that's a bit of a tragedy. I think that those kind of things need to be organized and kind of restored. So I think this is the broad framework within which probably we can have a few words. And Vivan is, of course, a veteran of several biennales, triennales, art fairs, you name it, and has taken critical positions on it. So one would love to hear what he has to say. And Nanak, again, has been curating at many of these spaces, and one would like to hear his perspective on how he comes in.
Well, I'll start with the last subject, the Biennale. I mean, there's a lot that that the evening's event has to deal with. The Kochi Muziris Biennale already has been mentioned. I'm glad when I walked in that Alka Pandey was speaking about it. I missed the first part of it. So you have some sense of what it is. And as Sadanand has said, that it is a unique event because it's some imaginative fantasy, desire of 2 middle generation artists to start a Biennale. And just as a bit of personal anecdote, I tried to initiate a Delhi Biennale about 5-6 years ago, and I'm a believer that the Biennale all over the world initially has to have the support of the city, the state, or the nation to take it forward and for it to last. I mean, you don't hear Bill Gates or Sony, doing Biennales. So the fact that it is something which is in the public realm, it is the state that feels and that culture is something of great significance, and as Sadanand said, the museums are one very old established entity. Of course, the Venice Biennale is well over 100 years old, but we've seen in the last 2 decades hugely an enormous expansion outside the Euro-American world, and what it has shown is that there is a great flourishing of art activity, and the Biennale is a sort of institutional space which is spontaneous. I'm using that word because it's not institutionalized like a museum. It now has a policy where curators are appointed, whereas earlier on, like the Lalit Kala used to do the Trinale, which was always, you sent out invitations, not to artists, but to embassies, and embassies told the different countries for their art organized. So it was bureaucratic in a way. Despite that, there have been some remarkable presentations. But in our times, definitely the Biennale stands for either self-appointed, like in this remarkable case where 2 artists proposed this, and it just happened that there was a very open, liberal, surprisingly from the Communist Party of India, Marxist cultural minister, who said, yes, I am for it. It's great. Kerala already has many international events in theatre and in film, etc. So he says, yeah, art is great. And so what one is saying is that institution building, which we are constantly attacking and rightly, where the state, where it is the museum, the Lalit Kalas, our National Gallery of Modern Art, why are they not active? Now, I'm not so sure about his word of muscular power, because I think that the institution, in fact, lacks muscular power to assert its power and hegemony. It's not been doing its bodybuilding, and so they are pretty weak, and then they are apathetic, they don't do anything. So if you take that analogy and say you can easily send in some commando forces and there'll be nobody there to gun you down. But why has this not happened? Why is the cultural public not asking any questions about what happens in the National Museum? Why is the National Gallery of Modern Art, when it built a whole new building, and nobody's actually even critiqued the nature of that building? I mean, it's a white elephant. You can hardly show anything in it. In fact, the old colonial building could possibly even be better. But that's aside. So there is obviously in the last 2 decades the presence of a growth which is now being mentioned through the art fair, where the artists have gained enormous visibility. They have got economic independence. I mean, before the 1990s, 80-90% of the artists had to have a job in a school or a advertising agency, you name it. And since then, in Baroda, when I went there 4 or 5 years ago, that's even when the economic, they said there are 500 artists who are full-time artists living in Baroda. It's much cheaper. Artists from Bombay are coming living in Baroda. So, at that level, I think the art market has given this enormous freedom and space for production. And a huge country like India, has to have a huge number of artists that are producing. And I'm not going to go into that usual thing that compare ourselves to China, but there is that difference. And I think that at one level it has proved and shown enormous results. Then you can always say, well, they become commercial and all that. But a Subodh Gupta couldn't arrive where he's arrived at if he didn't get this support. and that it's become part of the. So I think to come back to the Biennale, that I mean, I'm a passionate supporter for this, and they've made this huge romantic mistake of putting so much their own private money, which they did well by selling paintings. These are the two curators, and have got most of the people working almost free, and that's not how it should run. Now, how do we? And because I have an element of being an activist, and I put it to you, they've got about less than 3 weeks to close shop, that how can we, in terms of publicity, in terms of supporting it, and finally it's a matter of cash, it's a question of money. How can this run? Or will this just be one incredible show and we'll always say that it happened? And how can we are not part of Kerala, but we are part of this country. If we can put to the, as he's quite rightly saying, I mean, I spoke to a well-known art critic who's in the Lalit Kala Akademi, Amit Mukhopadhyay, who's otherwise an internationalist, and he keeps, tab on everything. He said, I've hardly read a review of this Biennale in Calcutta, And I said, you just got to go down and see it because it's exceptional, So I think that at one level, information and what it is, and people who see it will carry that memory, and that's something they can communicate. But finally, I mean, I have no answers to how this Biennale can survive, but somehow, some voice, some spirit must take it forward. So it's a romantic call, but I really deeply believe that it should last.
Thanks, Diwan.
I'll start with the art fair, with the first art fair, the so-called, hyped art fair in Delhi. So, also I think you were also there in the audience and also raised some pertinent questions, and you kind of also felt that whose voice was this, with those Ferengi curators coming to it, and with those European, art galleries coming, as if we are still in the waiting room of meta-narratives, in the waiting room of history, to be validated by somebody in the West to recognize us. So that was there because I was also listening to you that fateful afternoon on the first or the second day of the the Delhi Art Fair. So it was there that I felt that there were two angles to it. One, some galleries wanted to dump the masters that were not selling there. They chose this art fair. And the second is few artifices of history. Who's speaking our past? Who's speaking about our art? Foreign curators, foreign critics. We need them to validate us. So that was the nomenclature, that was the a kind of a picture that I gathered in the first art fair. But it changed with the successive years. Today, this year being the 5th probably. So it changed. So but some dealers, I know some dealers in the private conversation, they rue the fact that people, they don't come to our galleries anymore. I mean, collectors and all that. They prefer to go to art fair once in a year, and as if they're entering into an assorted pastry shop and they will pick and choose the objects. It's more kind of an open, they can make more. They offer more possibilities for them so that is there. And regarding the Biennale, yes, we've been hearing about this, that you and Sheba and all these people, they're planning to build up this, Sheba Chachi, about this Delhi Biennale. And also Jogend also hit up on a plan that Nanak, let us have a Calcutta Biennale. We have a Kolkata Art Fair, we have a Kolkata Book Fair, which was only limited to 10, but with the present incumbent Chief Minister, probably she's thinking of having the book fair around the year. So she's extending, from 10 days to 20 days, and we'll have, throughout the year, we'll have a book fair. But why not an art fair? Why not we have a Kolkata Biennale there? So we had meetings in Fleury's for a few days, and then also in Shantiniketan and all that, but it fizzled into cold air after some time, because Joganda was also busy with some other thing, and we also another thing. So we're also planning to have a Kolkata Biennale. We should have. I think there is so much of activity there in Kolkata, and there are some. So I think we are also planning. This is also in the pipeline that we should have a Kolkata Biennale.
No, I mean, there's comment about that. I think that there were, for example, some criticism about the Kochi Biennale that it didn't include or support enough local artists. Now, whether subsequently or they have in fact an exceptionally large number, but people will still criticize. But I think that one of the assertions of a Biennale is its internationalism,
Okay.
and in the way that it is then curated. So these curators meet people spontaneously, they ask them, or they think that X, Y, and Z is an important artist. So if they can get Ai Weiwei, they somehow got his work and it was shown. So I think that that is a very important feature, and because both these artists have been successful, I mean Riaz Kumu shown in the Venice Biennale, they travel. So I think a kind of personal and deep knowledge of the international, is important. And maybe the arts in Kerala are not as, in quotes, whether you call it using new media, it tends predominantly to be painting, so that it's also making an assertion for new forms of art which have been part of the Indian art scene for almost 2 decades.
True.
That, if you quote the thing, is lagging behind, just as fair amount of that lagging behind is there even mentioned in Calcutta. So I think that this effort, because these two artists, live in Bombay, they've got much more a sense of the pulse of things, that interface between a lot of the art world, critics, etc., good artists, have gone and shown there, and done, work with great passion and interest and involvement, personally given money to make it. That I think is very unique, and international curators have remarked that this is the difference of this Kochi Biennale, that a lot of the work is related to the place, to its history, etc., and that there's some quality in the work which isn't just things flown down, which is the usual criticism. And if it can sustain it, it is a model, and it has been, I mean, whoever is writing and seeing who's come from different places. So how can we build on this rather than it just getting sunk? I mean, as Geeta Kapoor said it, if Venice is sinking, then the Kochi Muziris should rise, but it shouldn't also meet the fate that it will also sink.
True.
And sorry, this thing about foreigners endorsing our thing, I think that is very passé argument, Indian artists, Indian institutions, I mean this Neha Kirpal, I mean coming from nowhere, has got the confidence to be able to organize, a big scale.
That was the first one.
I'm saying now, today.
No, so it has totally effaced out. This notion has been totally
I think that.
But I'm talking about in that context.
The foreign galleries that come and dumping.
Because that waiting room syndrome was still there.
Their work is not something that's worth much of its salt.
Yeah, but the other aspect about the Biennale is that internationalism apart, it's supposed to be a space for critical practice. I mean, it's not a space for endorsing existing stuff or continuing in, one kind of historic practice. It's a space where people can come together to actually explore or critique or, in fact, open out the canon. So I think I'm not very, enamored by this idea that you should need to have biennales in every city of India. But that's not the point.
No,
the location of Cochin is interesting. It just happened. It's chancy because the exhibition in Pattanam was happening, because a connection with ancient Rome was found out. But it's interesting because it's probably the first global port town in India. Vasco da Gama landed there, the first Muslim traders landed there, the first Jewish synagogue was built there, the first church was built there, the first mosque in India was built there. It's an amazing space. It's the first global portal, let's say, to the Indian subcontinent. And in one sense, therefore, the ancient past connects you to a very, very contemporary present. And you realize the globe in a different way when you are in Kochi, and when when you get artists to engage with that past, engage with
means,
that, and that's what,
she
for example,
mentioned
you've done with the
Julia
shards,
Kristeva.
it's like bringing up 2,000 years of history up to the
sexuality as
surface
legitimate,
and looking at it
objects of
in a,
study,
in a
as well
very,
as
very
matters
new,
of
very contemporary
insistent
way, which is
political
what
importance.
I guess all of us should be doing.
It is remarkable how in intellectual
which
life,
is what
the advent
probably
of sexuality and
the
popular
Biennales
culture
need not
as
happen
chief
if the
ingredients
museums
of
were a more
study
dynamic
has
place.
helped to demolish the
I
Puritan
mean,
dogma.
in one sense, we
Seriousness
can connect
is
it
one
like
thing
that,
and
but then
pleasure another. Cartage art.
I will not accept Vivan's position that the museums are there, but they are not muscular.
Yeah.
I think they are tremendously muscular. When they want to take down a Bhupen Khakkar painting, they do it without impunity. When they want to critique Surendran Nair, they take it, throw out his work without impunity. And nobody can protest. No artist community can go and stand at the gate and say, look, boss, you are our space, National Gallery of Modern Art, National Museum, you are our space. You can't do this in this kind of unilateral way. I have not seen that happening. So, see, the point really is that there seems to be some unwritten, unspoken policy within the state apparatus. We don't know what that is, but we don't know, what that nebulous thing called the state is. But there seems to be some, in the last 15 years when I've seen this, secretary after secretary of culture with whom I've shared dioceses like this have said, have not batted an eyelid to say, look, Baba, leave us alone. We are a poor government, we are a poor department, we are a poor ministry. We don't have resources, we don't have expertise, we don't have money. Why don't you go to the private sector? So this deliberate reneging of a mandate. In a democratic state, it's a public mandate for the public institutions to perform and deliver. If you set up the academies, if you set up the museums, their job is to deliver back to the citizen things that enrich the citizenry, enrich the practice of being a citizen. But if you say, no, see, we can't go to the private sector, then it's an abdication of responsibility. And in this case, they are not doing it with a policy statement. There is no written paper, there is no white paper, there is no document. So we don't know. It's just that year after year, and I'm saying this because by some strange set of circumstances, I happen to be on 3 or 4 different national committees. I know that every year these institutions are returning money to the government. National Museum last year returned 100 crores back to the government saying, I can't spend it, too much money. And what is the meaning of that? You don't have labels in the museum, you don't have lighting, curators are not there, galleries are shut up. I mean, it's an extraordinary situation. So, on the one hand, you have that. On the other hand, you have my, someone whom I keep quoting all the time, Hal Foster, this wonderful art historian, who's almost like a philosopher, who says that the best artwork in the world today is the mall, is the super mall. And the most aesthetic thing you can go is to go and shop. So you have got that on one hand, you have crumbling institutions on the other, and you have this peculiar spaces within which artists have to live and find their destiny, actualize their ideas and their imagination. So it's an interesting critical moment. I'm not pessimistic about it. I think it's this kind of situations are what eventually bring up new ideas and new energies and new spirit out. And one is hoping for that kind of an artistic breakthrough, probably through Biennales or probably through a completely different crazy idea of a new museum, which denies this kind of institutionalism, which denies the hegemony and power inherent in the idea of a museum. So for that you need more engaged public discourse. You need more engaged conversation around this. And basically for me that's the point.
No, but the new museum, as you see in the Kiran Nada Museum, means that the state, as you're saying, is abdicating whatever transformative aspects it should have. Now the fact that you cannot find the curators, the directors to run these museums. As the ministry says, I've heard it being said, to the director of the museum that we are not the experts. It is you, and you have to then activize it. We are not trying to stop it. I mean, that was could be a kind of liberal position about it. But this is then the big question, that why, in this, if there is a growth of art activity, there are now, curators are increasing, art magazines have increased, there are 8 or 10, whatever level they are, but they are being produced. That why is it that people who manage and both creatively and organizationally give the backing, the support, for keeping this activity going on in a critical and dynamic manner. How that will be broken is very difficult to say, but the one institution which is growing is Neha Kirpal's art fair. So then, do you abdicate it that for 3 days you get it, you get some of the top international scholars for intellectual activity, you get an incredible turnout which is almost like higher than any other art fair in the world according to her statistics. So there is a public, and the way you advertise it, you get them. You can't see an artwork, you only see people there in the art fair. So there is a great...
Isn't it also called being co-opted?
No, whatever it is, but there is something that people want to go and see art. And if the museum, has a show, whether it's of Tagore, I went there almost on the Rabindranath Tagore, and the place was empty. So last few days people rushed to see the exhibition. So then obviously there is not enough of a drive to open it out, to say the footfall figure that was given. I think the National Gallery doesn't believe in a footfall. It doesn't record how many people come and see an exhibition. The Anish Kapoor one is done because other organizations from outside want those figures, the British Council or XYZ. So how this turnaround will take place, is whose guess, I don't know.
Sadanand, you were talking about this having a museum of our vivisection of the subcontinent, which means the partition of India. Diwan also mentioned, why can't we have? We can't have, because you show me even we don't have a single history of the partition written without the so-called antecedent and the villain, as described by Hayden White. There has to be a villain. Either the villain is Nehru, or there is Jinnah, or there it's Gandhi. Why we can't have a subjective history of the partition?
There are two brilliant histories, one written by Kamala Bhass and Ritu Menon, another by Urvashi Butalia. Women's perspectives on the partition.
And also, I've only
seen... In fact, material for a museum.
Only I've seen a small booklet written by that CPI MP who died, I can't remember the name, who was the CPI, the Communist Party. He was a very good scholar and a writer. He wrote absolutely a brilliant booklet about the partition without, victimizing or just finding out the villain of the partition. So, and also now, coming back to that, because I think we have a kind of a selective amnesia. We don't want to talk about the partition, though it sent a teutonic shock across people when millions were slaughtered and there were no political leadership, no responsible political leadership during those events which took place between 46 and 47. But when Thomas was released and people I don't remember the year, on national television, millions watched it in a total state of shock. So it is still a fact that I don't know whether I should use the word or we prefer a kind of a selective amnesia.
This question will remain. So I think the dialectical tension is between power, market, and critique. And is it possible for the three to coexist or at least crash into each other? I don't see the crashing happening at the moment because not enough intellectual output is happening around this, but at least if there is a little more tension that is foregrounded, then probably we have the possibility of a different kind of discourse. So with that, I'd open it to the floor, anyone who has...
And even if you look at
and along with that, you can also come into the presentations that both Vivan and Nanak made and take questions. 1 second. Yeah.
And even if you look at the construction of the Indian Museum in 1900s, you know what politics went behind it. What power and which imperial power selected what should be there.
Yeah.
Whether the Didarganj, Yakshi should be there in Calcutta or it should be sent back to Patna.
Somebody has a question.
Thank you so much. In fact, I'll make a brief comment because, see, we have these discourses on the stage. We have three, extremely gifted gentlemen sitting there. But, like, look at the magazines. Take on Art, in Art India, and Journal of Arts and Ideas, I think, already closed down. And Take on Art, believe me, is not sold in Chandigarh at all. There are 1 or 2 copies which come, and 3 we get in the academy, and I haven't seen anybody buying that. So we are producing something, but that is not being consumed. That is another issue. So we create something which is given to only a limited few. So we are not making enough efforts to reach out to the public also. That issue also has to be addressed, Alka.
Just a few additions perhaps and a few remarks, because these are 3 issues which are, I think is absorbing the mind of all of us. I think just to say that all the 3 in some ways for me are interrelated. The art fair becomes a space of great consumption. And I think perhaps it's a space where both the artists and the gallerists do benefit, because it's not a space where only the gallerists can benefit, because if they do not bring the brightest and the best, it's not going to be consumed. And the Biennale, for example, what has been done in Kochi has been a fabulous effort, and I think in some ways it is the responsibility of all of us here to kind of sustain it, and I'm sure we are all going to try for that. But, one of the things which I feel is that we are talking only to the converted. Time has also come that, now our press has also become, in some ways, the guardian of the oppressed. And if, for example, we can take it into social media and the press, which holds aloft the banner, why is there not a Triennale happening? Why is there not museums or galleries, public institutions becoming interactive and opening out? I agree with you. There's no shortage of funds with either the Department of Culture, with the museums. It's just that it's also not fair always to blame the bureaucracy, but the processes. And I think that the new model of the public and the private is a very interesting model. And if we, include the people who are actually the executors, whether it's a parliamentarian, whether it's the sticky job of, as you say, that you've shared the dais with the Secretary of Culture. The last secretary did do a lot in his own way. He gave huge fundings for the Rabindranath Tagore thing. There was a budget of 150 crores for that. And sure, it is easy to say he was Bengali, so he did that, but lots happened. And he made things turn around. So I think time now is for all of us to also don the role of standing up and talking, not only in platforms which are like this, but probably in some ways getting people who are responsible and say, bhai, hamare paas paise nahi, getting them to come and involving them in sticky questions. I know it is difficult. They also have their own methodologies of defense. They run away. But I don't know, maybe I'm a positivist and I will still not give up. I think things are happening. We've had a Biennale. The Indian Art Fair is in its 5th year, and I don't know if it did make as much money as it has made in the last many years, but it is bringing out some kind of attention, and the fact that we are here and talking about it is a good thing. But I think we need to take the discourse out of only preaching for the converted and maybe going to the corporates who are also looking at CSR, but they say they're only looking at education. Probably we also need to become different kinds of soldiers of the art. We have to also look at new ways of presenting our cases. And I think perhaps there's a lot of goodwill. There are private museums which are coming up. There are foundations which are happening. And I think we just need to widen the net. And perhaps perhaps use the press a little more effectively, I think, because, you know, the press has done wonderful things, whether it's the rape case. If it was not for headlines today, we wouldn't even be having that kind of speedy kind of judgments. It's not that rapes have stopped, but there is some kind of accountability. And perhaps I think that, you know, we look for different spaces also where we are reaching out to people. This is just my few thoughts.
Mr. Avtarji Dhanjal, I would like to, I was thinking of introducing, not introducing, most of the people know him. He is a friend and a mentor. He is a sculptor who lives in UK, but he is a product of the Chandigarh College of Art. He is going to ask a question.
Thank you. It's only a comment because I don't live here. I really don't know, understand the whole situation, and it's illuminating for me to hear you, what you've said. But I have some anecdotal kind of things. A friend of mine, Saji Mitra, probably you know, she's very active art promoter in London, from Bengal. And she set up Art Borderlines Foundation and doing active. She told me that she tried to work with several museums in India, and museum staff there, management, saying, we are being paid what we're doing. Why should we take extra work? What is there for us to work with you to have new activity in the museum? I think there is something it tells, and maybe something which we need to learn from some other sources. I remember in London, there was one artist meeting place. It was a building which was an empty building that they took over. What they did, near the reception, they kept a register of all the spaces. Any artist want to use any space, they didn't need to go to administration. They just put their name, the activity, what they would like to do, how long it will last, and it was always busy, because there was no bureaucracy to control it. So we have to probably learn something, the museums have to learn something. Why can't outside curators just come in and use their resources and space to create an activity? Why they have to create a new separate art fair or Biennale? Why couldn't that happen in the Museum of Modern Art in Delhi, when they are so kind of, what I hear, very little happening there. So that's all I want to say, but I'm very glad you all came here and shared this. Thank you.
Thank you, Avtarji.
There's another fair which took place, it's called United Art Fair. Somehow, I don't know, nobody mentioned about it. That was a kind of, counter kind of, in which I and Nanak were both there. And this was like not the gallery-driven thing. It was directly artists participating in that fair. And that is also, there was a lot of footfall there too. We are not going into the quality of the work which was displayed there, but at least somebody made an effort. And how sincerely they made it, that is maybe questionable, but at least there was something which was happening there. That is also, that needs to be looked into. Like I, in Chandigarh can say, I believe in that दुष्यंत का शेर है, कौन कहता है कि आसमां में सुराख नहीं हो सकता, एक पत्थर तो तबीयत से उछालो यारो. Any other question, please? Atul.
I have one question which is not directly related to the art fair or a Biennale or Trinale or museums, but general public. You see, our own people, what I noticed in all these years that when it comes to visual art, people are a bit, scared, afraid. They become, they do go to museums, they do see the shows and etc. But I noticed that, people are very apologetic. When they meet me, I say, oh, आप artist है. हमें तो कुछ पता, ये modern art हम समझ नहीं पाते, all that. I said, नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, it's just you have to get acquainted. And I tell you, at JJ School of Art, when I was a student, we were quite active, and every year at the annual show, we would invite giants of the, there will be musical night and the student show will open. So from Ravi Shankar to Kishori to Bhimsen and all, so we would, go and get Bhimsen Joshi, and he would have a quick round, and then he would say that, Nai Baba, he would say, "Okay, this, this more, I don't understand this art." I said, but Pandit ji, आप खुद इतना abstract गाते हो, तो ये तो नहीं, लेकिन ये मेरी समझ में नहीं आता. अच्छा, another thing that I have quite well read Pula Deshpande, one of the really fantastic writer, and generally people know about his humor, but he has written many other things, great essays on Rabindranath and all. In 50s, early 50s, he wrote that he traveled in Europe and he saw many things. He said he went to Louvre and he went to National Gallery in London and he saw, and then he says that at one point, but like he is fantastic, great knowledge of classical Indian music as well. And but then he says, कि ये एक दौर मैंने काट डाला, I could not relate to paintings and visual art. So, and I feel that people are not able to connect to visual art. Difficult. Now this literary festival in Jaipur, apart from the Rushdie and Ashish Nandi issues which came, but daily 4 papers which comes to my place, in Bombay, every day there is so much is written about who has come and who is reading, and there is on the TV, there is interviews and all that. But as far as visual art is concerned, fine art is concerned, I don't think so much not interested.
I personally believe it's a caste issue. Chitrakar is low.
Sorry.
I think it's a caste issue. There is a particular kind of a mentality we work with.
Caste issue.
Kalakar cannot be up in the hierarchy. Whereas someone who's a Shastri who can read and write,
Yeah.
Baba, वो तो पंडित है. लेकिन कलाकार बेचारा. That's an attitude. It's kind of.
I've been associated with it right from its inception. They have gone about it very systematically. They have a huge PR team, the same way that the Indian Art Festival has. Has a huge.
Otherwise, there was nothing about the art fair in Bombay. Maybe in Delhi, but
It's part and parcel of the fact that the newspapers have exited from arts coverage. It's part and parcel of that.
Yeah.
You can imagine, you can track.
No, but the more serious issue is, this is what I'm saying, that people are not able to, okay, good PR or not good PR or whatever, but I think people, we had such a great,
But it's also true that if you ask at least 95% of the people who troop into Jaipur, which book of Salman Rushdie have you read? They haven't read. So there's something else. It's a different kind of middle class.
No, what I am trying to say, Sadanand, is this, that probably, we had a great visual culture, our festivals, art from the past, everything. But as soon as this, say 50 onwards, the contemporary art, the modern art comes, I think somewhere, there is a kind of, rupture.
That is the same with an approach to sex also. After that Victorian prudence, the so-called Victorian prudery, we also don't like to talk about sex equally. It was not there during the pre-modern. So it came with the modernists. This prudery about sex and also about we being.
Please take the mic.
I would think that television is the area where visual arts can really kind of look at BBC and what they did for the films on Rembrandt, on all the artists, and then they have one whole program, 1 hour on one painting, Gustav Klimt's The Kiss, and the whole hour, there's a whole talk about that. Something of that sort, I think. If we can take up television as one of the...
John Berger's ways of seeing versus...
Yeah, exactly.
And also Simon Skammer's great series.
And secondly, see, all these days, what we have been doing, we have been discussing everything in English. We are actually keeping a major chunk of our population out of this discourse. There is not even a single book in Punjabi on art. The first book which came on, first was somebody who wrote a book on Amrita Sher-Gil, and that was more juicy, aspects of her life, which were more, given weightage rather than, critical analysis of her work or something like that. But there is another book which is like Paramjit Singh's book which is originally written in Hindi by Vinod Bhardwaj, which got translated into Punjabi. And same would be the case with many of the languages. And those persons, people like me, I come from a very small town in Punjab. I started learning my ABC when I was in class 6. So, but many of those, like I can still manage my affairs a little bit, but there are a lot of those who cannot understand what is being spoken about, what is being written about, and we do not have any ways and means to approach those people who are sitting in small towns, small villages. These young boys and girls are probably equally creative. They are not being given the opportunity of reading, writing, or seeing. So I think we have to look into that also, to produce literature in all the languages, even if it is translation only.
This whole division, in a sense, of Indian history in terms of the arrival of the British and the modern, and the modernity project, and I've been thinking that actually what this does, in a sense, is I'm not disputing at all everything that you've said, but it seems to me that more often than not, when we are constantly talking about the arrival of the modern with the British, then we are saying many things, but two things that I'd like to point out. One is that everything that happened in India before the British came is something that we don't need to look at. And one example that I would give is, for example, the Jallianwala Bagh. We talk about it all the time. But how many of us know that, about 50 years, before the Jallianwala Bagh, in Rajasthan, a similar massacre took place, where a Rajput king fired on his masses. Now that's one thing. Second is that, when we talk about British hegemony, we also assume that there was no resistance. And if we assume that, then what that means is that perhaps we're not looking in certain directions. And I'd like to give you one example. In the Shekhawati Havelis in Rajasthan have these fantastic paintings on the walls, where you can actually, anyone who's really imaginative could perhaps start writing a history of mobility by just looking at the ways in which these Indian artists painted these walls with trains and planes and automobiles and those kinds of things. So it seems to me that perhaps this understanding of the modern needs to be more nuanced, instead of sort of making these very stark different distinctions between the British and us. Thank you.
I think, you know what?
Another hand there.
Do you really want an answer from me? Because that is why we need to travel more towards the pre-modern and to search that space for pre-modern.
I really doubt if the pre-modern exists in its pure state.
It does exist.
For example, when you look at Vivan Sundaram's presentation and
I'll talk about
black gold.
I'll give you examples in literature, especially in Bengali literature. There is a gentleman called Kamal Kumar Mojumdar. He was writing in the thick of modernism during that hungry period in Bengal, and before that, during Achunta Sengupta and others. He was writing in a language. He was searching that pre-modern language, and he was highly successful too. And he's the most sought after author. Somebody like Parthu Chatterjee is writing a treatise on him, on Kamal Kumar Mojumdar. Or somebody like Jivanananda Das, who never got the chance to get his place in a literary magazine called Desh. So people like this are very important for us because they are navigating towards that pre-modern. So it's not that. These people are important for us today.
Right. See, my point is this, that, the way in which you want to recover the pre-modern, it does not exist.
Now, I'm not really recovering. I'm trying to recover or resuscitate any abundant space. I'm talking about to seek that language which existed there, and that's where the dismantling starts. Even what you see today in Vivan's work is exactly, that, the dismantling of that higher notion of art, that the higher notion belongs somewhere else.
I think the discourse is also in current times, at least in critical theory, you don't talk about modern and pre-modern, you talk about many modernities.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course, that is there.
You elide over that pre and past by doing that.
True,
now, for example, one can easily try to suggest that that period between 2nd century BC and 5th century AD, roughly 700 years, could easily be a great moment of Indian modernity, if you imagine in India kind of thing at that time. But
Yeah, the cushion is coming.
whether the kind of discourses that are happening, some of the most secular texts are being written, from
Yeah.
Natya Shastra to Yoga Sutra to Panini's grammar, everything is happening then. All the terminologies, codifications, classifications, amazing intellectual work is happening there, and amazing sustainability of that across the centuries.
Right.
Probably a
If
moment
I
of
could-
modernity.
yeah,
Even
I
if you
could
look
just
at those
add
Kushana
one
period
point.
that he referred to, the Kushanas came and they discovered a higher religion like Buddhism. They were Yuchi tribes from Middle China, and they came and they discovered and how they flourished, and how they flourished in literature, also in sculpture, and that was probably the first non-Hellenistic Indian sculpture that what we see in the Kushana period.
Right. No, see, I have
That,
no,
I mean, the period-
I'm not
well, the period that he
disputing
mentioned.
What I'm saying also is this, that if I could give you another example, in terms of just looking at how the modern is negotiated, and I'd like to refer to this essay by Ashish Rajathaksh, who's worked a lot on cinema, and Geeta Kapoor. The idea of how Raja Ravi Verma's paintings were actually not, people have been very dismissive about them, but the ways in which, Dada Saheb Phalke and others used that kind of frontality, in the way they made cinema. Now that is, instead of sort of saying, well, okay, Ravi Verma is someone who's sort of copying the West and all that, here is a very imaginative way of engaging with what seems like an imitation, but is actually opening up more doors.
And meanwhile, I would like to tell Alka Pandeyji, you know what happened to that fund, some fund given to that 158th birth centenary of Rabindranath in Calcutta? It ended up with a massive scandal, unheard of, after the independence. All the paintings that were hung there in the government art college, and some 20 lakhs went from the central government, when you mentioned about that Bengali secretary being there. All paintings turned out to be fakes, and declared fakes by people like Ratan Parimu and K.G. Subramanian when ASI conducted, and by Shiv Kumar. Actually, we filed a PIL that let's find out, and the High Court appointed ASI, as the arbiter or the judge, and the report came that this now government has been forced to appoint a CID, this thing.
Good evening,
so
sir.
see the result of that
Hello.
20 lakhs.
Good evening, sir. I want to speak in Hindi.
Tell us his name, naam bataiye.
My name is Tarseem Singh, sir. And we are very much agree with you, sir. मैं आपसे ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि ये हमारा सबका साझा दुख है. हम अक्सर पढ़ते रहते हैं अखबारों में कि म्यूजियम का ये पार्ट बंद कर दिया गया है, ये गैलरियाँ बंद हो गई हैं, या फिर वो अच्छे से काम नहीं कर रही हैं. लेकिन इस तरह से अभी तक कोई मूवमेंट वगैरह कहीं कोई एक्शन ऐसा दिखता नहीं है ग्राउंड फ्लोर पे कि कोई बंदा इन चीज़ों के लिए काम कर रहा हो. और मेरे ख्याल से आज आर्ट वर्ल्ड की गैलेक्सी के मेन स्टार यहाँ हैं, तो क्या ऐसा कुछ मूवमेंट शुरू हो सकता है आप लोगों की सहमति से, जिसको हम लोग भी ज्वाइन करें, क्योंकि ये बडिंग आर्टिस्ट जो हैं इन सब का ये साझा दर्द है कि गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से कुछ हो नहीं रहा. तो क्या ऐसा हो सकता है?
सिर्फ आर्टिस्ट नहीं, गवर्नमेंट के भी एक सज्जन बैठे हैं यहाँ पे.
नहीं, सहमति आपको चाहिए, हम लोग को नहीं. आप लोग करेंगे तो हम लोग ज्वाइन करेंगे. सहमति आपको चाहिए, आपको करना है.
Somewhere he is right, like Sadanand somewhere mentioned that he's been a member of many of the committees where he sits with those cultural ministers and secretaries. So हम तो इन्हीं का सर फाड़ेंगे ना. हम secretary तक तो पहुंच नहीं सकते. The young man is right that way, but he must be doing what he is capable of doing in his own ways. And Mr. Sharma has a question.
You looked towards me towards the very beginning, so that's why I was challenged to speak something. Now, I think this whole discussion, especially the last session about museums, the biennales, triennales, and the galleries, it's very interesting. Personally, I feel that museums have come to be synonymous with something which is acknowledged historically as our heritage, and it's there. So I don't want to enter into any debate. You have very relevant questions as to how museums are handling the current contemporary art and the contemporary artist's work. And if it is not being handled satisfactorily, I think there's a huge concern there as to how to find space for people who are producing work in India in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But I was just making an observation for myself that even these binales and trinales, in a certain sense, they are a fantastic space, especially for the contemporary art. I am saying that because the artists whose works are displayed there, the gallery owners and others who come there either to sell or to buy, and other artists whose works are not displayed there, they go there, that's one community. But besides that, there's a huge amount of other public who's coming there. And as Mr. Atul was mentioning, that ordinary public has this phobia, may not be the right word, but a very overwhelming attitude in sitting in front of a modern artist. Your work I don't understand, you don't want to hurt the person. So therefore, this public knowledge and art education also is very necessary. So I was just wondering that in some of these binales and trinales, a lot of discourses occur there also. There are speakers coming from abroad, from India. At the same time, maybe more activities can be included over there where this basic art appreciation, at least of the works that are exhibited there, is occurring more in a finite place, so that if I'm going there, I participate there first for 2-3 hours, and thereafter I can appreciate the works better. Having said that, the art appreciation actually is needed across in India. That's because as a society we are still trying to settle, trying to find our food and space and a house. Fortunately, the growth in our country in the last 20 years is encouraging, where people now who are settled to some extent are ready to allocate their time and ready to allocate their thinking time towards activities like art, modern art, and to understand others what they are saying. Now, who has to know it? For example, Mr. Sundaram's that installation regarding the slum housing getting demolished or getting raised, you would understand it, he would understand it, and artists would understand it very quickly. But is he making that message only for you? No, his message is perhaps for policymakers. But will we come and interact with Mr. Sundaram? Perhaps most of us will not. He's also making a statement for the slum balas only, that there is a concern somewhere in the mind of sensitive people about this, their life and their stories. And that's happening to too many contemporary artists now. If you, I use the word contemporary actually more in terms of, if you allow me to use the word, an activist artist. I don't know whether the word exists or not, but I have seen people, dancers and artists, engaging with contemporary themes and who are disturbed with something that is happening and then displaying it as a work of art, be it an installation, photograph, dance, musical. Now, when people like this are engaged in the last 10, 20 years, and more recently in India, it's going up and up. So it has to have its space, first of all. The public at large needs to know that this work is not only for Mr. Sundaram. Maybe his photograph will sell at a very high price and he gets benefited personally, but his work is of immense value to a lot of human beings and as to how we should evolve as a society. Now, for doing that, we have to create space for, I'm taking your example, Mr. Sundaram, but he and everybody else who has been here and other people who are there, find those spaces. Museums can be one good place. More academies, art academies have to come in our country. The binales, Trinal, I think if they can go from every city to another city, it will be a good idea. Because you see what happens is that a lot of ordinary public will not fly into Cochin. So even if I am totally dumb at art, but if I go to Cochin Binale, assuming I understood nothing, but it won't be. There will be something that I will carry from there. And then those fairs combined with some exposition of art to unsuspecting would be not a right word, but to, let's say, illiterate at art, to understand what the message is being conveyed, especially by the contemporary artist, I think there will be huge transformation in the society. And I remain actually very optimistic because India is growing. We didn't have so much of money 30 years ago. Last 10, 20 years, prosperity that has been seen, I think it's giving a space for art to blossom and groom, and people should remain responsible. If somebody goes based in the National Museum, it should be criticized. But next year we can pick up on those threads. And so thank you very much for all of you, the artists who have come to our town, the writers, authors who are so occupied with this subject. So I thought I took this opportunity to, certainly Mr. Manna would tell me in the end to speak, so I have spoken I think enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Should we bring it to a close? You have any comments to make?
No.
Aapji?
No.
Now I'll take 3 or 4 minutes, please, because this has been a great week of ideas, exchanges, and of having looked at varieties of expressions through varieties of mediums. And nowadays people are using a number of mediums. So we have a long list here. We began with Anjolie, Menon, and Kalidas. The next day we had Ashok, Vajpeyi, and Pushpamala. And the third day we had Sheba, Chhachhi, and Kavita, Singh. The fourth day we had Mithu with Girish, Shahane. Then the fifth day we had Navina Sundaram with Dayanita Singh. Sixth day we had Anju, Dodiya with Sadanand Menon. And today, this morning, we had Alka Pandey, Atul, Dodiya, and Tasneem, Mehta. Then we had Navina and Bhavna Kakkar. Now we have Vivan Sundaram, Sadanand Menon, and Nanak Ganguly. All of them are very, very important signatures in the field of art and culture and criticism curation. I thank them profusely, but I take this opportunity to do a bit of the publicity of the Academy, if you allow me so. Because we have come out with some of these publications just to show you, because many of you may not know, we have made great effort ever since we joined the Academy. So this is a catalog of Bireshwar Sen's exhibition, because we give great value to publications. Then there is a catalog on Jatin Das. Then there is a catalog on Raghurai. There is a catalog on Paramjit Singh. His exhibition also came here. Then we have this annual art exhibition catalog from 2011. And we are proud that this catalog won National Award for Printing. Then we have this annual art exhibition 2010, annual art exhibition 2009. Then a French artist called Jaminier, who had come to show his work here. Then we held an exhibition of the scholarship holders of the Academy. Then we have this latest catalog, which is I think I shouldn't take much of your time. It is available there. So we have been making efforts, and we also have these reproductions. They have come out packed. I think you can see them there. And we also produce Raghu Rai's work, and we also produced Paramjit Singh's set of 8 reproductions, and he signed them personally. In fact, he spent the entire money himself and donated this set to us. We are selling it at a very reasonable price. Signed prints, 500 rupees each. And it's only 100 prints. So Academy is making the money. So people have been generous. People have been really giving, supportive, including artists. Like Paramjit Singh gives us 1 or 2 scholarships every year. So I have to formally thank some of the people who have really helped us in this endeavor. I'll begin with Mr. Sharma. He raised the Academy's annual grant from 20 lakhs to 40 lakhs. That's why in fact, that is not enough. That is not enough at all. It should be at least 10 times more for a city of 10 lakhs. But he had his own reasons. If you had 20 lakhs, if we give you 1 crore, then people will ask questions. Double kar dete hain. But we are hopeful, and if he stays here a bit longer, we'll reach there. And then I thank Vivan Sundaram ji, Navina Sundaram ji, Devika Daulat Singh for providing us that beautiful exhibition of Umrao Singh Sher-Gil's photographs and Vivan's retake of Amrita. When we talked to each other, the gallerist asked us, would you be able to spend at least 1 lakh of rupees on that? I said, well, we didn't budgeted it. And I spoke to Vivan. He said, no problem, I'll frame it, I'll print it, I'll send it there. So he's so generous. And this exhibition is with his generosity. Thank you so much. And then we thank all the artists who have come, or their names I have already spoken. I need not go into that. All the artists, and Atul especially, because he's come for the second time, he's been very supportive, and he talked to others also, as many of you did. Then I have to thank administration. Why so? Because apart from the grant in aid, this is for the first time probably it has happened here, that entire gallery was repainted, all the screens were repainted, veranda was repainted, this wall was repainted. All due to courtesy Mr. Sharma. Because people down the line know that he means business and he loves art. The message goes across. Government Museum and Art Gallery. They gave us the gallery, they gave us this auditorium, they gave us other spaces to make a studio. I really thank the museum and their staff. Their, the Chaukidars have especially been very kind. Then I thank Siddharth. He is our member and for providing all this furniture to the academy. I wish he donates to us. I don't know, but and organizing many other things for the academy. He has donated furniture before also. Then I thank all the people who have been giving us donations and sponsorships. I won't take their names, they're all published in these catalogs. Then I thank Defi for comparing and helping, and I thank Iqbal Judge, who is not here, but he has been a tremendous support, preparing, introductions for 20 artists is not an easy job. And what I gave her was very little, very small. And then I thank our members, especially Bhim Malhotra, Madan Lal, our Vice President, Bhim Malhotra is our Secretary. Then I thank especially our staff. We have only 2 staff members in the academy, one peon and one clerk. And Shilpi Arora, she's the mother of 2 small kids. She goes from here at about 11 or 12. Even if the kids are crying, she really deserves it. And this memorabilia shop is managed entirely only by her, although she's not trained for that. And that's huge. And I thank the artists who have given us the rights to produce this memorabilia, although I know many of these are committed to various galleries and museums not to give these rights, but they still do give us. Previously, since other artists I would not mention, you already know, but Vivan and Navina were very kind to give us the rights to print one of the icons, Amrita Sher-Gil's art images on the memorabilia. That was, I think, the biggest achievement, apart from Akbar Padam Si, Krishan Khanna, Manjeet Bawa, Jatin Das, Anjolie Menon, many others, Ranbir Kaleka. Then I thank, amongst these, Pushpamala N gave us the right, Anjolie Menon gave us the right, Mithu Sen gave us the right, and Navina I mentioned, then Anju Dodiya gave us the right, Atul Dodiya gave us the right. No one else is left there. So I really thank them for, and all this memorabilia is available there. And Vivan and Devika Singh, they sent the books which are related to the exhibition, their work, and also the previous book which we released here when last time Vivan had come here, Letters of Amrita Sher-Gil, and that book is available today on 25% discount if anybody wants to buy it and get it signed by. It's not a must that you must get it signed to buy, but you can get it done. It's available there. Vivan has been very kind. He says, you offer them. I was saying, why don't we offer less discount? We'll make more money. He said, no, please give it. I said, okay, 25%. We don't make much of a money because there's lots of wastage. Every day, this memorabilia shop is entirely packed, goes back into the gallery. Every morning at 7 o'clock, everything is repacked, displayed. You can imagine the huge effort made by them. And I thank our PN. I shouldn't be calling PN, I'm sorry, but that is the nomenclature, that is the designation, unfortunately, Subhash Chandra. He works day and night. And I thank Anu. She has been great support. She's also Academy's member. And then I thank 2 ladies, especially Vandana Shukla, who has been doing all the interviews. Besides that, we have been interviewing all the participants in a studio. And also Mrs. Neelam Singh Chaudhary, who is not here today, but she has also been great help. Even at the last 15 minutes notice, she said, okay, I'll go ahead. She'll take leave from her university and come to take the interviews. I'm really thankful to her. Then 2 of our volunteers. One of the volunteers, she's fallen sick. Her name is Chavi Arora. She's gone. She was receiving many of them. Then Ishan Arora. Chavi Arya, Ishan Arora. I really thank them. They worked. It was their first time. They kind of came to work for this kind of event, but they really worked very hard, and sometimes at the cost of my shouting at them. But I know they understood. I understand. I really thank them. And I thank Parul Dar there. She was a member of the academy. And she has been helping us with all the catalog designs. She helped with the 2011 catalog design, then 2012 catalog design, then Vireshwar Sen catalog design, and now this little catalog, I think it's somewhere in Sadanand's, this one, Amrita Sher-Gil National Art Week. I shouldn't call it catalog, but a brochure. And this is also beautiful. She's been behind that, and she's come. She nowadays lives in Chennai, in Cholamandal, but we had to call her because I thought that this might collapse, and I'm really, really thankful to you, Parul. Then Pintu, our office sweeper, I really thank him. I had forgotten about him, and I think I have almost thanked everybody. But above all, I thank you all. And without you, I think we could not talk to each other only. And you have given us the courage, given us the, kind of stamina and energy that we can continue it. And next time, probably we can not only have this dialogue, these slide lectures, but also some more exhibitions, more installations, some other things happening along with it. Maybe one day a BNL. Why not? Let's think ahead.